Hello there, and welcome to the office. Doctor, is it time? Is it time yet? Yes it is, viewers. The PlayStation Portable. I mean, what is there to say that you don't already know about it? It was the only big contender against Nintendo in the portable department, and it was the most powerful handheld to release during its time. But its popularity didn't just boom within your average consumer market, it also extended out into the modding community. When someone asks you what system is great for playing emulators, the first thing you usually hear is the PSP. And not only do you have great options for emulation, but once you mod it, you get access to an immense library of homebrew as well as the capabilities to really push your PSP beyond what you bought in the box. So that leads to the big question then. How does one mod a PSP? Well, hold your horses. If you're going to be investing money into a PSP for modding purposes, you really ought to go big. Am I right or am I right? Well then, to get the most homebrew and emulators onto your PlayStation Portable, you're going to need a decent sized memory card. How about 16 gigabytes, huh? That sounds pretty rad. Well, it'll get us by, but no, we need something bigger. How about 32 gigabytes? That's a lot of storage right there. And yeah, it'll definitely work. We could put plenty of software on our PSP with that much space, but I mean, we're gonna be modding a PSP. We could go even bigger. In fact, we should. We need maximum storage. How about 256 gigabytes? That sounds reasonable. Whoa, hold on, Dr. Modelot. The PSP doesn't recognize anything over 32 gigabytes. Well then, get ready for your first PlayStation Portable mod, my fellow viewers. So what are you going to need for this mod? Well, first, you're going to need a PlayStation Portable. And unfortunately, due to the proprietary use of a Micro M2 memory card, this mod does not work for a PSP Go model. So very sorry. I would recommend picking yourself up a PSP 3000 model instead to get the most features out of it, but any of the other three versions of the PSP will work. And then, you're going to need a Microsd to Memory Stick Pro Duo adapter. These come very cheap and you can either get a single slot or a dual slot adapter. I'd recommend you pick up the dual slot version, which is going to allow you to easily upgrade your storage size if you decide to later on. You're also going to need 1 or 2 microSD cards depending on which slot adapter you purchase. If you're going to be using more than 32 gigabytes of storage, then this is the most cost-effective way of doing it. Buying 2 32GB microSD cards is cheaper than buying one 64GB card. And that absolutely applies to the larger sizes too. I bought 2 128GB microSD cards on sale from Amazon for $35 a piece. The inclusion of the dual card adapter was about $6 more, bringing me to a total cost of roughly $76. Compare that to buying a single 256GB microSD card, which on the day of this video can cost you about $130. Though, if you're just made of money, you could buy 2 of those to put together a 512GB PSP memory card, which is kind of overkill. So pick whatever pair of microSD cards you'd like to use, and the last thing you're going to need is a device that you can use to plug your microSD card into your PC to be able to access it. There is one last thing we need to be aware of before we get started. Larger memory stick sizes will mean longer read speeds on your PSP. A full 256GB memory stick takes about 25 seconds for the PSP to fully read. And because that's the first thing your PSP does when it turns on, that's 25 full seconds you're not going to be able to do anything with it. Custom firmware can speed up the read and write speeds of your memory stick, but I wouldn't rely on that information until we've actually installed it and tested it, so please keep that in mind. And let's get to modding. The first thing we need to address is the problem I mentioned earlier. The PlayStation Portable can't read memory cards over 32GB. The reason is because 64GB cards and higher use the exFAT file system. The PSP doesn't understand that file system. However, it can read FAT32 formats, which are memory cards of 32GB and lower. What you could do is use 2 32GB FAT32 cards to make a 64GB card for the PSP using our dual memory card adapter, or you could even match up 2 64GB microSD cards for 128 gigs of storage on the PSP, but we have a larger budget than that. The answer to this file format problem is simple. We need to convert our 2 microSD cards into a file format that the PSP can understand. To do that, you want to start here on your home PC. Go to Google and search for the Rufus formatter software. We'll need to download this application in order to convert our EXFAT microSD cards into the FAT32 format instead. I've included a link to the Rufus website in the description. Once you've downloaded Rufus, you can launch the software right away without having to install it. If you have your microSD card plugged into your PC already, you should be able to select it under the device drop-down menu. Rufus is used primarily to create boot disks for computers, however it will also work great for us to convert our microSD cards into a different format. As you can see, the default file system is set to EXFAT. Select that drop-down and change it over to large FAT32 default. You can rename the volume label to something else if you'd like to, but the only other thing we'll need to do is uncheck the Create a Bootable Disk box. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and start the conversion process. Rufus is going to warn you that the data will be erased, but go ahead and select OK. Don't forget this needs to be done for both microSD cards. Once the process is finished, switch the cards out and follow the same instructions again for the second microSD card. Now that both cards have been converted, you can insert both of them into your dual microSD card adapter for your PSP, and then insert that into, well, the PSP memory card slot. You're probably going to notice here that the PSP isn't reading the memory card we inserted. Don't worry, that's normal. Before we can use our newly created memory card, we have to format it within the PSP so that it can be recognized. To do that, navigate to your PSP System Settings menu and scroll down to the Format Memory Stick option. It's going to ask you if you want to format it, and after you select yes, it will provide another warning. Accept it and wait just a moment. And there you have it. Now that the formatting is complete, go back to your Games tab and you should now see a very significant amount of available space on your memory stick. Congratulations, you just created your first mod for your PlayStation Portable. But what's so good about having all that space if you don't have anything to put on it, you might ask? Well, in the next video, we're going to install the Pro Custom firmware, which is going to allow us full access to unsigned homebrew apps on our PSP, as well as many additional features that we're going to go over. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit that like button down below. Share this video with your gaming friends. Check out my Facebook page for cool posts and updates. Join my Steam group to hang out with the Dr. Modelot community, and subscribe for more awesome. This is Dr. Modelot. Thank you for stopping by the office.